So I only have a few or a restricted time. So I will only show you a few that will indicate to you how important cow signals is, or calf signals. So looking at this picture, one needs to ask yourself is, what do you see here? If you walk around a specific pen and you see one calf is suckling on another. So why does this happen? So we know that some calves do have a need for this, and it's most of the time it's the same calf doing it in a group. So the question is this behavior, will it create problems on that specific farm? And we know that in this example, we do see teeth injuries and we do see mastitis in animals without or in a young age. So we need to handle this. So the solution on this specific farm is to move that specific calf out of that group that's suckling on the other calves, for example. So one needs to walk around and see what do we evaluate. Another one is cleanliness. I have a score sheet that where we do this, and we look at how clean is that specific animal, because that's an indication of what environment our animals are in. So we need to evaluate around the tail, head, the flanks, the belly, the other, and also the lower rear legs. Are they getting dirty due to the environment and the heavy rains and the mud? And do we need to do anything about that? Can we do anything about that on that specific farm? Now, we all know that if animals are not clean, through this system, we know that 1 point decrease in cleanliness will decrease our somatic cell counts by 50,000 per milliliter. So it's something that we need to change, because we all know that if your somatic cell counts on the dairy farm is high, like this example, if you go from 500,000 to 200,000, we will improve milk production by 6%. So in a normal dairy herd that is averaging 25 liters in a 250 cow unit, this may mean that if we can decrease that somatic cell count, we can improve their profitability on an annual basis by over 350,000 rand. So it's a big focus on most farms, and therefore we need to do a cleanliness score to see is there a problem in the camps. We also do in parlor. When I'm on a farm, I like to spend time in the parlor, especially on the housed cows, where we have cow houses, to evaluate what do I see on their legs. If I see things like this, we know that there's a problem somewhere. If we have swollen hocks, like in the left upper photo, then we know that those cows will try not to walk a lot. They don't eat a lot. The feed conversion is down, and the milk production as well. So they're not efficient. And I need to change the system, and not only my diets, is to improve the feed conversions on that specific farm. The other thing is that we also evaluate, and I think one of these photos was also on Dr. Chris' slide on acidosis, is I like to evaluate the hardship lines on hooves when I'm in a feed or in a milking parlor, to see if I see a lot of these hardship lines. I know that the frequency of acidosis is quite often. So I need to do something about the diet, as well as how they manage that diet and how they feed their cows, to make sure that we don't see those lines, which is due to inflammation. And something that can give us a lot of information about how they feed or how they manage their cows. If I ask you, what signal do you see here? What do you see on these pictures? It was over 37 degrees centigrade outside. The cows don't lie inside. It's very warm outside and humid. So why are the cows lying on hard concrete instead of going into their beds? Well, in this example, you can see that the inside and the cubicles is way too small, and the cows can't go in there and be comfortable in the sense of flying there and getting in there and out there very easily. So they don't want to lie inside, and it's a good example or a signal to, if you see things like that, is to say, okay, if they lie outside on hard concrete, let's go in and see what can we change to optimize comfort for them so that they go inside and get out of the heat and produce more milk. So it's just an example. This is an example of cows when you look at the top upper or the upper photo. Those cows are too big. They don't lie down. If you look at the bottom picture, a lot of cows, instead of lying down and produce milk, they stand on their legs the whole time and they don't go lie down. You can see they're way too big for those cubicles. So we know if we see that, we will see less resting time, more swollen hocks, lower milk production, and poor reproduction, and they eventually lower profits as well. So we need to evaluate these systems and see the signals, or identify the signals correctly, and change those to make more milk efficiently. So if you compare this photo with photos like this, where you go into a cow house where they lie down, they very the comfort rate is very high, and look at the bottom picture, all those cows are lying down. So if I see a system like this and I compare it to the left picture where cows are not lying down, I need to change that as a nutritionist or as part of the team working on that farm to really improve my efficiencies for my diets to work. If they stay up, the feed conversions will be lower, and they will look at me and say, we need to reformulate, instead of taking the signal and doing something about that and change the management on that farm. If I see things like this, when they drink very dirty water, you need to go and evaluate why is that the reason, or what's the reason for that happening. Another signal is rumen fill, something that we use in every group. So when I go into a group and it's 2 to 3 hours after they've been fed, and I see a cow with a rumen fill score of 1, I know something is wrong. There's something in my diet that's either not palatable, or the cows are without feed, but this is not normal for cows to be this empty a few hours after we start feeding them early morning. So we need to get the rumen score, fill score of a 4 and a 5, that we know that cows are eating well, and that the feed is well balanced, and they're also very palatable, to ensure that we get the cows the intakes as high as possible. If I see things like this, manure evaluation, it's people laugh at me if they see me on farm, but I enjoy washing manure, and to make sure that what we see in that manure will tell us a lot about our nutrition, not only the diet on paper, but also how we manage that. So we need to evaluate that if we do that. As I indicated earlier, so I use my manure sieves to wash that, and then compare that to what our estimates is. If you look at the top picture, and that was that problem at that Middelburg farm, and I compare that to manure that's really well digested, you can see on the bottom too that there's a lot less particles on the right hand side that's coming out of this the bigger sieve, so a lot less. So we want to have more than 50% of our manure on the left side, the two sieves on the left side, instead of having too much on the right side. So we need to get digestion out of these cows, and the the system so that we get more manure that's digested to the left side of the screens. That's a good indication if cows are doing well from a fermentation and digestibility point of view. So we do a manure evaluation. I'm sure that you've all have done that in the past, and we score the manure from a 1 to a 5. So we don't want 5s because that's typical manure from a beef animal which is in maintenance in the veld. So it's very dry and high stacks that we see. So we need a manure score of about 3 to really have a good indication of what the manure looks like on a dairy farm. If it's on the left-hand side, then we have a lot of problems on that specific farm, and probably an indication that we have acidosis. All right, and as Dr. Chris already indicated, we don't want acidosis because the whole volatile fatty acid and the bacteria in that rumen changes, and so does our digestibility of our diet, and then at the end of the day we have less efficiency on those cows. If I walk around, yes.
Can I interrupt? As soon
Yeah.
as you've finished with this section, can I
Yes.
suggest that we just take a break for 5 minutes,
Okay.
seeing that this
All right.
lecture is 2 hours, so that you don't lose the students.
Okay. Well, I have a slide to indicate that to me, so it's coming.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So if I do heat stress and I walk around cows, and especially the pre-fresh cows or the fresh cows, and I see saliva like this, it's a good indication that we have heat stress in these cows. And later when we do leaky gut syndrome, you will see how negative this is on the system of cows. We all know that heat stress will decrease our dry matter intakes, so it will not help for me to reformulate. I need to sort out the heat stress of those pre-fresh cows on that photo to make sure that we increase our dry matter intakes through that instead of reformulating. So that will help me to have a better immunity and less metabolic disorders, as Dr. Chris already handled. If I see a photo of this, and this is a South African herd in the Western Cape, they asked me to come and help to improve the body condition score of the animals. And when I walked around and I saw this, and the feed troughs are on the right side, you can see cows cannot walk freely in and out the cubicles. They have to walk behind the other cows to get around the corners to really go to the cubicles to lie down. So you can see a lot of animals, and the space is way too small to really optimize feed conversion rates. If I look at other feed-related signals, we try to prevent sorting. So if I walk in the camp or through the houses, I look at how they eat. Do I see a lot of sorting? Do I see a lot of holes in that specific TMR, which is an indication that they sort and they try to eat the nice stuff and leave the long fiber particles for later, and we don't want that. We need them to eat. Every mouthful must be the same TMR as formulated to make sure that we don't get acidosis. Yeah, this is just the indication. This was a herd where the neck rail was too low. You can see the cows can just eat up to a specific point on this photo, and then there's a lot of TMR which is lying on the right side where cows cannot get to. So they will not eat the particles that's in front of them. You will see on the photo it's the coarse, unpalatable stuff, but they also cannot reach for more feed. So in my view, that feed bunk is almost empty because they can't eat at lip. If I see this was a photo, see the bottom of that feed trough on the right-hand side, very coarse. So will a cow go and eat there? Just up to a point, because it will really not be nice to eat from a feed bunk like this for them to eat freely. It's just too coarse. In my view, as I indicate on the other photo, if I see feed bunks like this is, in my view, empty. There's some people, farmers will tell you there's feed in front of them. There's no feed similar to the original TMR in front of them. So you need to indicate this to a farmer when you see this, that they need to give them more frequently, or get the feed pushed back so that they can eat from that. A very similar photo to you can see on the photo to a herd that we had problems in the Free State, in Vicksburg area the last few months. Cows have to climb up that floor area to get to the feed trough, and cows don't always do this. So this will lower our feed intakes over the period, and you will see that you lose milk as well as body condition. The one in Vicksburg was quite hectic because the level of the floor in comparison to the outside was about 1 meter high. So they had to walk around and almost 50 meters before they got to the walking pad closer to the feed pad. So a lot of energy that the animals waste to get to the feed trough. Just a quick one on signals on heifers. Don't ignore that. When you are on the farm, you do your preg test and everything. Always try and go around the heifers as well. This was just signals. This was from African system, a case study. People asked me to come in and help them to decrease their first age of calving, or actually the age of when these animals calve down for the first time. You can see out of this screenshot, a lot of the heifers were way under the normal weight or growth chart. This is the growth chart was to be between those two blue lines, and a lot of animals was too light and were not growing well. So I had to go in there. Average daily gains was way below 650 grams, and we tried to always get them close to 800. So they were off our normal benchmarks. The mortality rates was well over 8% for the first 12 months of age. And we saw also a decrease in the average daily gains for the first 4 weeks after weaning. So I had to go and look what's the problem. This was just some photos. You can see these calf hutches, as they stayed there over a period, the manure as well as the bedding increased in height, and they didn't change the water trough as well as the feed trough height. So it was very low and almost impossible for the animals to drink freely and eat freely. So on the right photo, you will see we changed the system so that they can move that to a higher level if the inside of that hutch is higher, so that the animal can eat on a normal level to improve that. So by doing that, we also had to walk around the rest of the animals to see, can we see something there? When I was there 3 times, every time that I arrived, I didn't see any water in the feed troughs. So I had to change that, and also a lot of animals in the feed troughs, and a lot of manure in that feed trough. So we changed everything. And after that, we did see a significant increase in their daily gains without changing their feed components a lot. So that decreased our feed costs at our age of first calving, as well as improvement of well over 200 liters of milk in their first lactation when we followed those animals. So it's just seeing the signals on farm level and changing what we see there. Elena, I'm almost done at this first part, so let me take you through another case study, and that is when we see, and we had a complaint as a team to say, this was a 750 cow unit. They saw a lot of dry matter intake variance from day to day, well over 11%. Normally we don't see that big variance from day to day, but also related to that variance in dry matter intake, a lot of variance in milk production. So we went out to the farm as a team and then evaluated the whole system. So one thing that we analyzed there is a lot of variance in the roughage dry matter moisture, or the moisture in that, and especially the dry matters of the maize silage. And you can see we took 2 samples on the face of the bunk in 1 week, and then a week after that another set, and look at the variance. So the moisture level on the first 2 samples was 38, and the next week it was 31. Now, for you working on dairy farms, that's huge, especially in a farm feeding 22 kilograms of maize silage. So bringing that back to practice and say, okay, so if we compare that variance, just the moisture of the maize silage, that means that 1 week they fed 8.4 kilograms of silage in a dry matter basis, and the next week they only feed 6.9 kilograms. So if the diet is balanced on the 6.9, by overfeeding maize silage, we increase fiber levels, so the animals will decrease in dry matter intake and therefore lose milk production. And if I put that back into my model, this variance just in moisture of the maize silage indicated that there must be a variance of about 2.6 liters a day, or from week to week, just according if I use those 2 moisture levels from the 2 weeks, which indicated that you also, by moving from 6.9 to 8.4 kilograms dry matter and silage, you also decrease the dry matter intake because it's more bulky, more fibrous, by almost 1.5 kilograms of dry matter per cow per day. So that will affect the milk production. We changed that, and at the end of the day, we rectified that problem. So what we've implemented on most farms is we do a dry matter test on all our wet materials every morning. Most of my clients do that every morning at 5, and then they put that into a spreadsheet that I created for them. And then when they put the new or the daily dry matters in there, that will change all the diets according to that day's dry matter in, or dry matter percentage of the wet materials, to optimize that. So we know there's a lot of variance in roughages, so we need to live close to those sources to make sure that we really optimize on a daily basis and not on a weekly basis. If milk production is like some of these farms, well over 30 liters a day, we need to focus on the specific things that may change our performance of those animals, but daily, not weekly. On the old days, we formulated on protein and NDF and things like that. But these days, we focus on more digestibility values. So without going into too much detail, we do a lot of analysis on these farms, especially the high-producing ones. And this is just an example. This is my handheld. So I have a NIR handheld. I can do an on-site analysis on my roughages. So doing all the different protein pools, fiber pools, carbohydrate pools, and then bring that back to the diet where we optimize these diets. Now, just a little comment is you will be asked as a vet some years or when you're on a farm during specific years after a drought, of why did the milk production decrease in March and February so much, and especially on some farms using high levels of maize silage. And what we've seen is if people don't keep storage of about 10 months, this is just a slide indicating that the starch degradability, the digestibility of our starch at 10 months of age, when it's in that bunk, it's almost like red wine. The older it gets, the better it gets. So if they move after a drought year from that 10-month storage silage back to very freshly cut unmatured silage, you will see a milk drop, and you will be asked a lot of questions around those periods from farmers. Why is my condition of the cows down? Or why is my repro not as good as the previous year? Well, in some farms, it's due to starch degradability in the maize silage, and you need to be aware of that. So in a high-producing cow herd, moving from that 10 months of age silage to a very unmatured silage, you can decrease 4.6 liters per cow per day. So it's a huge effect in herds using maize silage. So be aware of that, so that you, when you're on that farm, you walk through everything and ask the right questions. How old is that silage, etc. So in a 200 cow unit, that's 150,000 rand a year. And if you multiply that by 5, which is the herd size that we work with, you lose a lot of money if we see that. The other thing is, before I stop, is starch availability. You will see a lot when you do preg tests that in the manure, you see a lot of starch coming through the manure. And just be always aware of, we see more and more flint maize. That's the type of maize that we see in the market. That's that very vitreous type of maize, which is almost like popcorn maize. You can almost see right through it. It's very glossy, very undigestible. And some people will use maize which is very highly digestible. If you look at this on the left side, coming from a 85 or 87% digestible, and then move over to the next load of maize, which can be towards the right side. If you look at the histogram, that the one below 40% digestible, and moving from the left side to the right side, and that can be just one load of maize, you will decrease that milk production 10 to 12 liters in high producing herds. So, but you will also see it in the manure of the animal, a lot of starch and starch particles coming through, and to be aware of that. Same with lucerne. If they move from one batch to another, and Corlia can come in there, she's well aware of that because she's feeding mostly lucerne in her herd, where we see a huge drop in milk production when you go over to the different batches of roughages. So applied nutrition is many factors, as you can see, and we need teamwork. If you drive away from that specific farm, pick up the phone and speak to the nutritionist and everyone involved on that specific herd when you see a problem. Or if you drive away and you see everything is fine, then communicate and work together to really get the cows to respond to what we try to do on a specific farm.